Thank you very much indeed. The technology until that moment was so perfect. I was enormously impressed by it. Marikiba called it money-saving technology, but above all, it's carbon-saving technology. It's a political cliche to say that we're at a turning point, which was the title for this session. And I've worked for many years in the European Union, and we always seem to be either at a turning point or at a crossroads. But Marikiba articulated what is really almost a palpable sense of hope and opportunity on the nuclear file at the moment, especially with, as Senator Roach was just referring to, the extraordinary meeting of the Security Council on the 24th of September, which resulted in UN Security Resolution 1887. Now, that resolution calls for a strengthening of the non-proliferation framework. It supports better safeguards and compliance. It recognizes the right of all states to the peaceful development of nuclear energy. And it rededicates leaders of both nuclear and non-nuclear weapon states to the goal of a world without nuclear weapons. So the coming weeks, as we approach the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference, which will be preceded by a nuclear security summit, which President Obama has called for, is going to be critical. Get it right, and we would have taken a giant step towards a world without nuclear weapons, towards a safer world, and, vital in the climate context, a world less dependent on hydrocarbon energy. Get it wrong, and we face the threat of rapid nuclear proliferation, as well as the increasing danger that nuclear material will fall into the wrong hands. President Obama said that international law is not an empty promise, and treaties must be enforced. That was what he said at the time of the passage of the resolution a few weeks ago. And the NPT in particular must be enforced, which is why next year's review conference takes on such significance. Many would argue that the last review conference in 2005 was a wasted opportunity. We mustn't squander the moment again. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty can be understood as a grand bargain resting on three pillars. The first is prevention of proliferation of nuclear weapons. The second is nuclear disarmament and the commitment of the weapons states to the eventual abolition of nuclear weapons. And the third is international access to the peaceful use of nuclear energy. So the task next year is to reinvigorate that grand bargain, which means working across all three pillars simultaneously and doing so as one world community. The tendency to position the debate as a contest between nuclear and non-nuclear states has obscured our common interest in making progress across all three pillars and has complicated our common task. Now, there's a daunting task ahead, but we should acknowledge that much has been achieved in recent years. At their peak, the nuclear arsenals of Russia, at that time the Soviet Union, and the United States totaled 70,000. Today they amount to 1/3 of that, and both powers have committed to further reductions. They're working to complete a strategic arms reduction treaty, the START, which will be a successor treaty, by the end of this year. And as Mayor Akiba was just celebrating, that will certainly accelerate the drive to further reductions. Given that they still hold between them about 95% of the world's nuclear weapons, that is crucial. But it depends on parallel progress elsewhere by all states, including Britain, across all three pillars of the NPT, with the international community strengthening non-proliferation controls, tightening the screws on states that fail to uphold their non-proliferation commitments, and creating the conditions for a world without nuclear weapons. And with the nuclear weapon states re-energizing their commitment to nuclear disarmament obligations and taking concerted action towards it. Britain, for its part, has moved a long way towards disarmament. Since the end of the Cold War, we've reduced the total explosive power of our nuclear arsenal by about 75%, and the number of available warheads to fewer than 160. We now have only one nuclear weapons delivery system, which is the submarine-based Trident system. And even here, we're trying to maintain the momentum of reduction. my Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, recently tasked his National Security Committee to report on the possibility of meeting our minimum requirements with 3 next-generation submarines from the mid-2020s, rather than the current 4, provided this is consistent with credible and continuous deterrence. We've also made clear that as soon as it becomes useful for our arsenal to be included in a broader negotiation, we stand ready to participate. Now, Britain is committed to a world without nuclear weapons, but we have to create the conditions in which it's possible to reach that goal. On the 16th of July, the Prime Minister laid before Parliament the British government's Road to 2010 plan, proposing a phased approach. It's designed to promote improved transparency of current weapons capabilities, to achieve verifiable multilateral reductions in arsenals, and to overcome the technical, security and political obstacles to a world free from nuclear weapons. Our approach is built on 5 strategic objectives. The first and most important is universal nuclear disarmament. All states must maintain the pace of progress towards a world without nuclear weapons. In this context, the Conference on Disarmament should at once launch negotiations without preconditions on a treaty to ban fissile material production for nuclear weapons or for other nuclear explosive devices. And those countries that have not yet done so should sign and ratify the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty without delay. Britain is undertaking important work at the Atomic Weapons Establishment into the science and technology of verifying warhead dismantlement. Part of this work is a unique trilateral project between Britain, Norway, and the verification NGO Vertic. In September, we hosted a conference of P5 military, science, and political experts to share experience of verification research and to discuss further confidence-building measures. The second strategic objective is preventing the proliferation of nuclear weapons. States with nuclear material and capabilities must assume the full responsibility that goes with their possession. That not only means upholding in full their commitments under the NPT, but ensuring the security of fissile material. My Prime Minister has offered assistance to any nation that seeks Britain's help in improving nuclear security. This is a field in which we've had long experience. Meanwhile, the international community must strengthen cooperation in confronting states that refuse to play by the rules, including through the application of sanctions if necessary. The IAEA's role in monitoring non-proliferation obligations effectively has been critical, but it needs trained personnel and it needs resources, and it needs the support of the whole world community to enhance its verification regime. The actions of Iran and North Korea in particular are testing our common resolve. If we are to maintain the momentum towards a world free of nuclear weapons, this is a test that we cannot fail. We must insist that all states comply with their non-proliferation obligations. The third strategic objective in the Road to 2010 plan is in promoting peaceful uses of nuclear energy. In return for undertaking to forego nuclear weapons and full acceptance of international verification disciplines, non-nuclear weapon states must be given facilitated access to the benefits of the peaceful uses of safe and secure nuclear energy. To this end, Britain has presented a proposal to the IAEA to provide guaranteed access to nuclear fuel supply services. The Prime Minister also announced in July the creation in Britain of a nuclear centre of excellence to promote the development of cost-effective civil nuclear technologies harder to divert into weapons programs. The centre is being developed in partnership not just with industry, academia and the National Nuclear Laboratory, but with other countries too. And meanwhile, we support the IAEA's central oversight role. The fourth strategic objective is to stop nuclear terrorism. Terrorist networks, including Al-Qaeda, have made clear their intention to acquire nuclear weapons. We must ensure that they can never do so. Britain has invested £270 million on global threat reduction projects since 2002 and is continuing to devote some £36 million a year to this end. Canada too has taken a strong lead in this work through the G8 Global Partnership. The final strategic objective in the 2010 plan is universal signature of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The Security Council Resolution 1887, passed a few weeks ago, calls on all those states not party to the treaty to accede in order to achieve universality as soon as possible. We continue to work to bring the non-NPT states closer to the international non-proliferation mainstream. We also need to press on with both the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty and with the Fissile Material Cutoff Treaty. The moratorium on explosive nuclear testing observed by all the nuclear weapon states is valuable, but it's not enough. By allowing CTBT to enter into force, we could show that we're all committed to this path for good. And it goes without saying that United States ratification would provide a tremendous impetus. So I conclude by saying that after a decade of deadlock, there really is reason to be hopeful that we can now move to decisions. Britain seeks a reinvigorated non-proliferation treaty that will increase the confidence of all and thereby promote agreement on an ambitious but achievable way forward. The NPT Review Conference in May of next year is not a destination, but it is an opportunity that might not recur to agree a clear and credible path to full nuclear disarmament and a safer world. Thank you very much.